This episode examines a real, unresolved disappearance. It is a story constructed from the public record, from police reports, press coverage, and official statements. We will not accuse individuals or speculate beyond documented facts. Our purpose is not to solve the case from a distance, but to understand the shape of its questions, the weight of its uncertainties, and the enduring impact it has had on a family and a community. All information presented is based on these publicly available records, and we approach this subject with the utmost respect for everyone involved. Every unresolved case leaves a void, a space filled with questions that echo through the years. They become stories of absence, defined by what is no longer there. But some cases are different. They are not defined solely by what's missing, but by what mysteriously appears. This is one of those cases. It is a story that pivots not on a void, but on a single disturbing artifact. 9 months after a young woman vanished without a trace, an image surfaced. It was a Polaroid photograph found in a convenience store parking lot over 1,500 miles away. It looked like a message, a cryptic and horrifying glimpse into a darkness no one had been able to penetrate. And for decades since, the central, agonizing question has never been whether this photograph existed. Its discovery is a documented fact. The question has been whether anyone was willing to believe what it seemed to show, whether it was a cruel, unrelated hoax or the only clue ever found. To understand the photograph's significance, we must first return to the day the silence began. On the morning of Tuesday, September 20th, 1988, in Belen, New Mexico, 19-year-old Tara Calico prepared for her daily bike ride. Tara was a sophomore at the University of New Mexico's Valencia campus, a bright and ambitious student with a well-ordered life. She was known for her discipline and her adherence to routine. That morning was no different. She told her mother, Patty Dole, that she was heading out for her usual 36-mile ride along Highway 47. She had a tennis date with her boyfriend scheduled for 12:30 p.m. and told her mother to come look for her if she wasn't home by noon. A small, seemingly insignificant instruction that would soon become a haunting premonition. She left her home around 9:30 a.m. Her bicycle was a neon pink Huffy, a distinctive detail. She wore a white t-shirt, white shorts with green stripes, and carried her Sony Walkman to listen to music. The route was familiar, a path she had traveled countless times. The day was ordinary, clear and bright. It was a morning like any other, until it wasn't. Noon came and went. Tara did not return. 12:30, the time for her tennis match, passed. Still no sign of her. Patty Dole, holding on to her daughter's words, did what she was asked. She drove the familiar route along Highway 47, scanning the roadside, expecting to see Tara fixing a flat tire or just taking a break. But the road was empty. There was no bike, no Walkman, no Tara. The ordinary had collapsed into a sudden, terrifying absence. By late afternoon, the Valencia County Sheriff's Department was notified and the official search began. At first, the effort was guided by the most logical and hopeful assumptions, that this was a case of delay, perhaps a minor accident, a miscommunication, a simple coincidence. Investigators and family held onto the belief that there was a rational explanation, that Tara would soon walk through the door. But as the sun set on September 20th, that hope began to erode. Time, which had once been a measure of routine, now became an adversary. Each passing hour stretched the boundaries of the ordinary into something far more sinister. In the days that followed, the search efforts expanded exponentially. The initial drive along the highway transformed into a massive, systematic operation. Hundreds of volunteers joined law enforcement, conducting grid searches on foot, on horseback, and with all-terrain vehicles. They scoured the vast, unforgiving landscape of the New Mexico high desert. The community rallied, plastering missing posters with Tara's smiling face on every storefront, telephone pole, and bulletin board in Belen and beyond. Investigators began the painstaking work of building a timeline and seeking witnesses. They canvassed the entire length of Highway 47, knocking on every door, speaking to every resident, ranch hand, and motorist they could find. They questioned friends, classmates, and her boyfriend, trying to uncover any hint of trouble or any reason Tara might have deviated from her plan. But the investigation yielded almost nothing. A few potential sightings emerged, but they were conflicting and ultimately uncorroborated. Some witnesses reported seeing Tara riding her bike. followed closely by a light-colored older model pickup truck. The descriptions of the truck and its occupants varied. One witness claimed to see the truck trailing her on her way out. Another saw it on her return route. But these accounts were fragmented, separated by miles and minutes, never coalescing into a solid, actionable lead. They were ghosts of information, impossible to confirm. Days turned into weeks. The only physical evidence ever recovered were fragments of Tara's Sony Walkman and a cassette tape, found scattered along the roadside about 19 miles from her home. It was her Boston cassette. It appeared to have been deliberately broken. This discovery confirmed she had made it at least that far along her route, but it offered no clue as to what happened next. Was it dropped in a struggle? Was it thrown from a vehicle? Like everything else, it was a fact without a context. There were no other recovered belongings, not her bike, not her clothing, not her keys. The investigation was stalled by a profound lack of evidence. There were no confirmed witnesses to an abduction. There was no crime scene. There was no definitive direction of travel after the point where the cassette was found. The case file grew thicker with reports, interviews, and dead-end leads. But the central narrative remained empty. The case entered that familiar, dangerous space reserved for the most baffling disappearances. A vacuum of information where nothing contradicts anything, because there is nothing to contradict. It is a state of pure ambiguity, where every theory, from the plausible to the outlandish, can exist without being disproven. For investigators and for Tara's family, it was a maddening reality. Certainty had nowhere to attach. The trail had gone cold, and the silence was absolute. Until, 9 months later, it was broken by the click of a camera shutter, captured on a piece of film that would change everything. On June 15, 1989, nearly a year after Tara Calico's disappearance, a woman in Port St. Joe, Florida, over 1,500 miles from where Tara was last seen, walked out of a convenience store. In the parking lot, lying in a space where a white Toyota cargo van had just been parked, she found something. A single Polaroid photograph. An object discarded, seemingly insignificant, yet it would soon become the most haunting and debated piece of evidence in a case that had grown cold. The discovery was mundane, accidental, a piece of litter on a hot Florida day. But what it contained would reignite a national conversation and send a current of desperate hope through a family waiting in limbo. The photograph was chilling. It depicted a cramped, dark space, later identified as the interior of a van. Inside, 2 young people were lying on what appeared to be bedding or pillows. A young woman and a much younger boy, both bound with their hands behind their backs, their mouths sealed with black duct tape. They stare up at the camera, their expressions captured in the stark, unforgiving light of the camera's flash. The image is claustrophobic, intimate, and terrifying. It's a snapshot of a moment no one was ever meant to see, a private horror made public by a single careless act of disposal. When the photo reached law enforcement and, eventually, the Calico family, a flicker of recognition ignited. The young woman in the photograph bore a striking resemblance to Tara. Her mother, Patty Dowell, was immediately convinced it was her daughter. The shape of her face, the look in her eyes, it was enough. But there was more. A faint scar was visible on the woman's leg, in the same location as a scar Tara had from a car accident. And next to her lay a copy of the V.C. Andrews novel, My Sweet Audrina, reportedly one of Tara's favorite books. For a family starved of information, these details were not mere coincidences. They were signs. The resemblance was strong enough to matter. It was a tangible link, a thread to pull in a case that had offered nothing but loose ends and silence. After months of agonizing uncertainty, the photograph presented a concrete possibility, however grim. It was strong enough to hope that Tara was alive, hope that she could still be found. This single, grainy image transformed the abstract pain of not knowing into a focused, desperate mission. The photograph was immediately sent for professional analysis. The image is examined by multiple agencies, including the FBI. The initial wave of hope was met with the cold, methodical process of forensic investigation. Every pixel, every shadow, every detail was scrutinized. The goal was simple: to confirm or deny if the woman in the photo was, without a doubt, Tara Calico. But the nature of the evidence itself made this task incredibly difficult. Some investigators see similarities. They point to the facial structure, the specific details noted by the family. They argue that the collection of coincidences, the scar, the book, is too strong to ignore. But others hesitate. They are trained to see beyond emotion and focus on the objective facts presented by the image itself. And the facts were ambiguous: lighting, angle, image quality. These were the confounding variables. The harsh, direct flash of the Polaroid camera could distort facial features, wash out details, and create misleading shadows. The angle from which the photo was taken could alter the perceived shape of a nose or a jawline. The inherent graininess and low resolution of the film stock from that era meant that a definitive, one-to-one match was nearly impossible. The scar on the leg could be a discoloration. The book could be a tragic coincidence. After extensive analysis, Scotland Yard in the UK reviewed the photo and concluded it likely was Tara. However, the Los Alamos National Laboratory disagreed, and the FBI's official findings were less certain. The photograph is not confirmed. The scientific analysis could not provide the definitive answer everyone craved. The result was a frustrating, maddening stalemate. The evidence was too compelling to dismiss, but too ambiguous to act upon with certainty. And in institutions, unconfirmed often becomes inactive. Without a positive identification, the photograph could not unlock significant new resources or direct the investigation down a single, clear path. It became a piece of data, a point of contention rather than a key. It was logged, filed, and entered into the vast, bureaucratic machinery of a long-term missing persons case. This is where the case changes shape. The investigation pivots from a search for a person to an argument over a picture. It's a subtle but critical shift. The central question was no longer, where is Tara? But is this Tara? The energy of the investigation turned inward, focusing on the validity of this single clue. It's a common pitfall in complex cases. The evidence becomes the subject, not the person it's meant to find. The case doesn't stall because evidence disappears, but because its credibility is debated. The photograph is discussed, filed, referenced. It appears in internal memos, in meeting minutes, in reports that are passed from one desk to another. It becomes a talking point, a symbol of the case's enduring mystery. But it does not trigger decisive action. No major raids are launched based on it. No primary suspect is identified from it. The van in the photo was never definitively traced. The boy was never identified, though the parents of another missing child, Michael Henley, also from New Mexico, believed it might be him. His body was later found, ruling him out. The photo created more questions than it answered. Because systems are trained to move on certainty. Law enforcement agencies, courts, and forensic labs are built on protocols that require verifiable facts and reproducible results. They need evidence that can withstand scrutiny, that can build a case brick by brick. Ambiguity is like sand in the gears of this machine. It gums up the works, prevents forward momentum, and forces a state of perpetual pause. And this image introduces something worse than a dead end. Possibility. A dead end allows for closure, a line to be drawn. But a possibility, especially one as potent as this, keeps the wound open. It creates a state of permanent, unresolved tension. For the family, it's the hope that she's alive. For investigators, it's the possibility that a crucial lead is being mishandled or misinterpreted. It's a ghost in the machine. As the story of the photograph broke in the media, public belief fractures. The image was broadcast on shows like A Current Affair and Unsolved Mysteries, bringing Tara's case into millions of homes. The public became a jury, examining the grainy photo on their television screens. Some are convinced the photograph is Tara. They write letters to the police, to the family, to the newspapers, sharing their own theories and offering their support. They see the resemblance, they feel the mother's certainty, and they believe. Others dismiss it entirely. They see a tragic but unrelated crime, a case of mistaken identity fueled by desperation and grief. They argue that hope is clouding judgment. Debate replaces direction. The national conversation mirrors the internal one happening within law enforcement. The case becomes a public spectacle of what-ifs. What if it is her? What if it isn't? Every element is dissected in the court of public opinion. The photograph, once a piece of evidence, is now a piece of media. Its meaning shaped and reshaped by every broadcast and every article. And while debate feels active, it often delays action. The energy that could be spent on new leads is instead consumed by re-examining the old one. The public discourse, the conflicting expert opinions, the family's unwavering belief, it all creates a fog of uncertainty around the case. The investigation didn't stop, but its focus became diffused. The Polaroid, which had promised a breakthrough, had instead locked the case in a state of suspended animation, caught between a terrible possibility and the absence of proof. Years pass. Not as a gentle flowing river, but as a series of slammed doors. Each passing day, each month, each anniversary is another opportunity lost, another lead gone cold. The world moves on, memories blur, and the sharp edges of urgency are worn smooth by the relentless friction of time. For the investigators, the case file thickens not with new information, but with the weight of its own inactivity. For the family, the silence deepens, becoming a permanent feature of their landscape, a constant, humming reminder of an unanswered question. The case remains open, a technical status that feels more like a bureaucratic courtesy than an active pursuit of justice. It exists in a state of suspended animation, a ghost in the filing cabinet, and at the heart of this inertia, the photograph remains disputed. It is a paradox, an object of intense focus that has generated only paralysis. For every expert who saw a flicker of possibility in the grainy image, another saw only ambiguity. For every member of the public who felt a gut-wrenching certainty, another cautioned against false hope. The debate itself became a story, a distraction that consumed oxygen and attention, while the central tragedy remained unaddressed. The photograph was not a key, it was a lock, freezing the investigation in a state of perpetual debate. And here is the quiet, devastating truth that gets lost in the noise of authentication and analysis. Even if the image were 100% irrefutably authentic, if the FBI's own labs had declared it a perfect match on day one, the delay would have mattered. The simple, brutal fact is that the photograph did not appear in the immediate aftermath of the disappearance. It surfaced months, possibly even a year or more later. It was found in a parking lot, a piece of evidence divorced from any context. Who took it? When? Where? Why was it left there? Without answers to these questions, the image was not a map, but a single, isolated coordinate with no surrounding geography. It pointed to a moment in time that had already long since passed. Because response time is the difference between investigation and aftermath. In any missing persons case, there is a concept known as the golden window. The first 24 to 48 hours. This is the period of maximum opportunity, when the trail is warmest, when witnesses' memories are sharpest, when the possibility of intervention is at its peak. An investigation is an active, dynamic pursuit of a present-tense problem. It is about finding someone. An aftermath, however, is a forensic excavation of the past. It is about finding out what happened to someone. By the time the Polaroid was found, the golden window had long since closed. The investigation had already transitioned into an aftermath. The photograph, even if real, was a message from a ghost, a report from a time and place that no longer existed. This case is often framed as a question of identity, a simple binary choice. Was it her or not? This question became the central pillar of the public narrative, the subject of documentaries, articles, and endless online debates. It's a compelling question because it's simple. It offers the illusion of a resolution, a key that could unlock the entire mystery. If it's her, one story unfolds. If it's not, another begins. We are drawn to this simplicity, this fork in the road. But that question, for all its magnetic power, misses the deeper, more systemic failure. It focuses our attention on the unknowable, on the granular detail of a single piece of disputed evidence, while allowing the knowable institutional shortcomings to fade into the background. It's a form of misdirection, whether intentional or not. By obsessing over the who, we fail to adequately scrutinize the how the system responded, or more accurately, how it failed to. Evidence does not move systems simply by existing. It moves them by being believed, and more than that, by being acted upon. A piece of evidence, no matter how compelling, is inert on its own. It is a silent object in a room full of noise. For it to have power, it must be picked up, examined, understood, and championed. It requires an advocate, someone within the system willing to stake their reputation on its significance, to push it past the inertia of bureaucracy and the skepticism of colleagues. And belief is filtered by comfort, by precedent, by fear of being wrong. It is filtered by the institutional desire to avoid costly mistakes, to not chase shadows, to not be seen as foolish. Precedent dictates that strange photos found in parking lots are often hoaxes. Comfort lies in following established procedure, which may not account for such an anomaly. And the fear of being wrong, of sparking a massive, expensive search based on a cruel prank, is a powerful paralytic. This is the human element of investigation, the friction that slows the gears of justice. The most unsettling possibility isn't that the photograph was ignored. It wasn't. It was analyzed, debated, and scrutinized. The truly chilling possibility is that the system worked exactly as designed. It's that uncertainty was treated as justification to wait. The lack of definitive proof was not seen as a call for more aggressive investigation, but as a valid reason for inaction. The system, faced with an anomaly that didn't fit its procedures, defaulted to its safest setting: stasis. It chose to treat the photograph as a riddle to be solved, rather than a siren to be answered. That doubt became delay. Each layer of ambiguity, from the photo's discovery to the conflicting expert opinions, added another reason to pause, to reconsider, to wait for more information that would never come. Doubt, which should be a catalyst for inquiry, instead became a sedative. And delay became distance. Not just distance in time, but emotional and operational distance. The case became colder, more abstract. The missing person becomes less of a person and more of a file number. The urgency that fuels an immediate search dissipates, replaced by the methodical, dispassionate process of managing a long-term, unsolved case. The distance becomes insurmountable. We believe evidence speaks for itself. It's a comforting mantra, one that underpins our faith in the justice system. We imagine a crime scene, a courtroom, a laboratory where facts emerge, pristine and objective, and point inexorably toward the truth. We want to believe in the power of things, of fingerprints and fibers and photographs, to cut through human bias and tell their own story. This case proves something colder, something far more complicated. Evidence needs permission. It needs permission to be heard, permission to be trusted, and permission to be acted upon. And that permission is granted or withheld by people, operating within systems that are themselves governed by rules, budgets, and a deep-seated aversion to risk. The photograph arrived at the door of the system, but no one with the power to do so was willing to turn the key and let it inside. The cost of that hesitation can never be truly calculated. This is Armchair Files, and this was File 02. This case remains unsolved, not because nothing happened, but because certainty arrived before understanding. If this case left you feeling unsettled, share it with someone who believes that compelling evidence always forces definitive action.